Imagine this, you're standing at the edge of a bridge, the wind whipping around you, your heart pounding in your chest, and on the other side lies the person you thought you lost forever, the one who left, the one who pulled away, the avoidant. And in that moment, you surprise yourself because instead of fear, you feel power. Because you realize when an avoidant starts missing you, the script rewrites, everything shifts, their walls thin. The silence becomes a question, the absence becomes a message, and you become the pivot. In that instant, the invisible armor they wore starts to crack, and you witness something rare, longing, something you thought they couldn't feel, because for so long you believed you were the one chasing, hoping, waiting, but now they're the one turning back. And when that happens, the ground beneath you tilts, the air changes. What once felt powerless becomes something poised, and you stand in the middle of that shift, breathing in the new energy, stepping into the space they've left open. You become the one whom they miss, and in the missing, the change, and in the change, the power. So let's dive, because you're not here to sit in the waiting. You're here to step into the movement. To understand when an avoidance starts missing you, everything changes, and you are going to be ready for that change, to write it, to own it, to direct it. When someone who typically retreats, locks up, flinches at closeness, when that person starts turning toward you, when they start missing you, that is not just a glitch in the system, that is a signal that something inside them is shifting. The first sign might be subtle, a longer pause before they hang up, a glance across a room that lingers, a message sent without the usual guard. You might feel the air change, like a door is cracked open quietly. It could feel even strange to you. You wonder, am I imagining this? But you're not. There is a moment when the avoidant who has distanced, who has protected themselves, who has hidden behind silence and self-sufficiency, quietly begins to feel the emptiness of that distance. They begin to feel that absence. And when someone who fears absence starts to feel it, everything tilts. What you must do is become alert to that moment, because recognizing the pull doesn't mean chasing the pull. It means seeing it, accepting it, understanding. Because the avoidance internal engine is complicated, they might feel the missing, but their default will still be to push away. They'll feel the longing, but their fear might still lock them in retreat. And so you have this paradox, they miss you, yet they might still act as though you're not there. They might keep the walls up even as the inside cracks. And you, if you're paying attention, will sense the mirror of that wall trembling. You recognize the moment when the avoidance pull begins by tuning into changes in frequency. They used to reply in 24 hours. Now it's 12. They used to laugh less. Now you sense a hesitation before their smile. They used to guard their heart. Now you see it just a little less guarded. You might notice their posture relax in your presence. You might overhear them referencing you in a conversation they usually wouldn't. It's not dramatic. It might not be loud, but it is real. And here's the key. The moment you recognize is not just theirs, it becomes yours, because you are witnessing a shift. When an avoidant starts missing you, they're facing a truth they've hidden. They want connection. They fear abandonment. They fear vulnerability. And their pattern is breaking. You see it, you witness it, you honor it. Proactively, you prepare yourself for that moment by strengthening your emotional radar. You ask yourself, what behaviors are habitual? Which signals are new? What does it mean when the one who always pulled away now pulls toward me? You don't wait for them to tell you. You observe. You listen with your mind and with your instincts. You track the patterns. And once you detect the shift, you give yourself credit. You've moved from being passive in their orbit to being present in the dynamic. You have the awareness. That awareness gives you power. Because in the awakening of their missing, you're not churned by confusion. You're anchored in clarity. And when you're anchored in clarity, you can respond with integrity. You don't leap. You don't panic. You don't flood them with messages. You don't revert to old habits of chasing. Instead, you step into the next phase. You hold space. You hold your value. You hold your truth. You see the avoidance shift not as your trigger, but as your invitation. Invitation to show that you are stable while they wobble, to show that you are consistent while they navigate uncertainty, to show that you are worth staying for when they decide to move in. Because when an avoidant starts missing you, it doesn't always lead to connection. It can lead to confusion, retreat, rebound, or repeat patterns. But if you recognize the moment clearly, you make that signal a turning point. Not a trap, not a drama, but a doorway. So recognize it, honor it, respond from strength. Because that moment, when the avoidance pull begins, is your point of power, and when you step into it with presence, you become the one who changes the equation. When the avoidant begins missing you, a dramatic internal transformation may be taking place behind their reserved exterior. You might feel it, a hesitation, a longing, a shift in tone or proximity. But what's crucial is how you respond. This isn't the moment to diminish who you are in the name of getting them to stay. It's the moment to hold your value with unwavering conviction. Because value isn't something you negotiate. Value isn't something you diminish to match someone else's fear. Value is your foundation. Their shift might test it. Their missing might tempt you to move closer, not by genuine connection, but by desperation. Avoidant patterns often trigger your deepesting vulnerabilities, the ones you hid #because them. Now that the avoidant is pulling in or beginning to, your value will be tested. Holding your value means first that you remember your story, the aspirations you carry, the boundaries you uphold, the self-respect you earned. It's easy in the moment of potential reconnection to slip into old habits. You soften too quickly. You give too much too soon. You lower your guard. But what happens then is you give them the version of you that's been available before. They move closer again, the dance repeats, and the power stays with fear. Instead, as they shift, you lean into your worth. You might say to yourself, yes, I'm glad they're noticing me. Yes, I see the opening, but I will not betray my core to fill it. Because you know this, the avoidance shift is not a guarantee of everything changing unless you change something inside you. You hold your value by staying consistent in your demeanor. You show up not with frantic hope, but with grounded curiosity. You communicate not from need, but from intention. You don't ignore their signal. You honor it, but you don't pivot your entire identity around it. In affirmative silence or measured presence, you show you are present, you are available, but you are not at the mercy of the moment. When they pull back, you don't collapse. When they step in momentarily, you don't overinvest. You hold the steady rhythm of your life. Because when you're steady, you're attractive. When you're erratic, you attract chaos. Holding your value also means continuing to build your own world. While the avoidant was distant, you may have paused, hoping their return. Now that they're returning, you don't pause your growth. You don't freeze. You continue your purpose. You continue your friendships. You continue your goals. You continue your self-care. You continue your voice. Let them see a you that was never contingent on their attention. Because nothing strikes deeper longing in an avoidant than the fact that their absence did not erase your presence. You also hold your value by speaking truthfully, communicating what matters when it matters rather than placating. If you feel the pull, you might feel the urge to say, I'm glad you reached out. That is fine, but also express your boundary with connection. I'm glad we're talking, and I'd like us to create a space where we both feel safe and connected. Saying that acknowledges the shift without positioning you under their pendulum again. Your words become anchors. They mean something. They reflect your value. In the shift, when they begin missing you, you might face fear. The fear that if you stay too rigid, they'll pull away again. The fear that if you loosen your value, they'll pull in superficially. But the truth, your value is the immune system of your connection. If you weaken it, the avoidance old pattern wins. If you strengthen it, the missing becomes meaningful. And the meaning breeds courage in them. Because the missing isn't simply about chasing, it's about realizing this person holds their ground. They see me. They respect themselves. Maybe I can trust them. So hold your value, show your presence, respect your boundaries, and let their missing intersect with your strength, not overpower it. Because the intersection of their shift and your value is where transformation can happen. When an avoidant starts missing you, there's a rhythm that emerges, a message sent, a silence held, a glance offered. But within that rhythm, there's a danger. They start to feel your presence, yet you might feel compelled to sprint toward them. Chasing from texts that flood, messages that demand response, calls that lean, may feel natural, but it erodes the dynamic you've worked to build. To communicate without chasing means to bridge the gap with clarity, presence, and integrity, rather than panic, intensity, and concession. Consider this: when someone who avoids looks back, they're fragile. Their bridge from retreat to reach out is narrow. Flooding the bridge with your urgency may collapse it. What they need is a partner who stands steady, not someone leaning forward with desperation. So your communication becomes the quiet breeze rather than the hurricane. You acknowledge them, you engage them, you express interest, but you do not consume them. This means when you send a message, you give meaning, not demands. You check in, you reference something shared, but you do not say, "Are you pulling away? What's wrong?" Because pulling away is their signal. You don't have to verbalize their fear. Instead, you say something like, "I've been thinking about that time we talked about. Would love to hear your thoughts." You open a door. You don't push it open. You also respect silence. When they don't respond immediately, you don't interpret it as rejection. You interpret it as part of their process, and you don't fill it with follow-ups. You remain calm. You know the missing is beginning, but you don't interrupt its flow with your own anxious echo. You are a beacon, not a lifeline. Communication without chasing also means you show up in person or figuratively with your full energy, but you don't test them. If you meet them, you show up happy, grounded, conversational, not frantic, not flustered. Your body language speaks, "I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you reached out. But I also have my own world." Because that distinction matters, you are noticing them, not being controlled by them. When you communicate, you also feed the vision of what the connection can be. You don't bring the past baggage or the "why did you leave?" You bring possibility. "I'm glad we're here now. What might we build from this moment?" Because when an avoidant misses you, what they often fear isn't you. It's the vulnerability you represent. And when you shift the conversation away from drama toward potential, you invite them into a different game. You avoid chasing by owning the tempo. If they need space, you give it. If they open up a little, you engage a little. You don't escalate the tempo based on your fear. You scale based on your strength. Your message to them becomes, "I'm here. I'm present. I'm ready. But I will not compromise my core to earn your connection." In that steady communication, your behavior becomes the message. They begin to realize that your value is not conditional. They see the difference. And when they see it, something in them shifts further. They realize they don't just miss you. They miss the way you were consistent when they weren't. They miss the calm you held while they fluttered. That missing is powerful. So communicate with clarity, engage with intention, respect their process, and above all, stay in your power, not in your fear. Because when the avoidant starts missing you and you respond with grounded communication, you change the game. In the moment when an avoidant begins to miss you, a delicate dance unfolds. The leaning forward, the pulling back, the internal tug-of-war between wanting closeness and fearing it. This dynamic demands something more than wishful thinking. It demands boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are signposts. They tell the avoidant, "You are welcome here." And they tell you, "You will not lose yourself here." When you set boundaries that honor both your needs and their space, you're creating a field where connection can emerge safely. From respect, not urgency. What does this boundary setting look like? First, you know what you need. Not from fear, but from clarity. You reflect, what do I want from this connection? What behavior am I willing to accept? What behavior am I not? You don't ask these questions to control them, you ask to control yourself. Because your boundaries are about you. They give structure to your presence. Second, you honor their process. The avoidant pulling in means they're stepping into vulnerability. They might test the boundaries. They might retreat again. When you've given them space, when you've communicated without chasing and held your value, you still need boundaries that say, "I will respond, yes, but I will not bend my life around your rhythm." This may mean you decide, "I'll communicate 3 meaningful times a week. I'll meet in person once a week. I'll maintain my friendships and hobbies unaffected." You don't punish them for retreat, you simply remain consistent with your boundary. Third, you express your boundary not as threat, but as clarity. You don't say, "If you don't, then I will." You say, "I am willing to connect in this way. I also honor the space you need. My integrity means I can't meet more than this because I must live fully." You frame it as an offering of how you show up, not a demand of how they must. This creates invitation while retaining integrity. When you set boundaries honoring both needs and space, you also guard against the old pattern replay, the push-pull cycle. Often the avoidant pulls back, you chase, they pull in, you flood, they pull out, chaos. But now you've disrupted it. You've said the rhythm of our connection will not be hostage to your fear or my urgency. It will be anchored in mutual respect. You've created a safe container, even if fragile, where trust can form. Boundaries also educate the avoidant. They might not consciously know how to receive connection without retreat. Your consistent presence combined with your boundary signals we can build differently. It teaches them you're missing doesn't mean you get to rewrite every rule. You get to show up. I'll respond, but I will not shift my foundation. In that teaching, the missing becomes meaningful, because if they pull in and you collapse your boundary, they learn connection equal to chaos. But if they pull in and you hold your boundary, they learn connection equal to respect and safety. Then everything changes. Your boundary also safeguards your heart. You've been in the waiting long enough. You've wondered whether you'd sacrifice your growth for someone's fear. Not this time. You stand tall. I will engage, yes. But I will not resign my hope, my dignity, my world to our uncertainty. When they pull back, you don't collapse. They remain missed, but you remain grounded. When they pull in, you get to decide, not just respond reflexively. Thus, setting boundaries that honor both your needs and their space is not contradictory to building closeness. It's foundational for it. Without them, you build on sand. With them, you build on rock. And when the avoidance starts missing you, the strength of your boundary makes the missing sustainable, worthy, real. When an avoidant begins to miss you, one of the greatest mistakes you can make is to become defined by their absence. You freeze, you wait, you reduce your world to their door closing and opening. But you have everything to gain when you transform absence into presence in your own life. Absence doesn't have to mean void. It can mean space. It can mean possibility. It can mean your life unfolding while someone else contemplates coming back in. And when the avoidant is missing you, you don't shrink, you expand. This transformation begins with your inner attitude. When they pull back or when they simply aren't fully present, even amidst their missing, you choose to be present with your own world. You invest in your ambitions, your creative fire, your friendships, your biography. You move as though your life is not paused waiting for their return, but is moving forward, generating momentum. Because someone's missing you doesn't mean your life should miss you. Presence is your state of being. You live in your moment. You engage real relationships. You show up for yourself. While they navigate their missing, you aren't idle. You aren't frozen. You build. You grow. You shift. You become someone whose presence is defined by your own trajectory, not their availability. One practical way, pick projects that reflect your growth and purpose. Let your social circle expand. Let your interests deepen. Let your self-care become non-negotiable. Meanwhile, you stay connected to them but not consumed by them. You create your life in which the avoidance missing becomes a subplot, not the plot, and that changes everything. Because when someone starts missing you and your world is rich, you look different to them. They feel the person they pulled away from is no longer available to be pulled away from. They feel the pull of your momentum, the magnet of your integrity. Transforming absence into presence also means you deal with your emotional world. You feel the sting of their missing, the echoes of what was, the question of what could be, and you respond by feeling fully, not burying, not igniting chaos. You honor the absence by giving it space to exist, but you don't give it the steering wheel of your life. You feel it, you process it, you learn from it, you grow because of it. Presence in your own life means you have boundaries around your feelings, your actions, your self-worth. You don't allow their coming or going to define completely how you feel. Your emotional infrastructure is your own. You can imagine your life as a stage. The avoidance missing is a wind that blows through the curtain. It affects the light, the atmosphere, but you remain the actor. You remain the director. You can't make them the set designer. You remain the story, and the story becomes one of growth, purpose, momentum. When you transform absence into presence, you also signal to the avoidant that you are not just available, you are powerful, that you have value independent of their recognition, that your life is full even when they're missing. And that in itself becomes irresistible. Because deep down an avoidant may fear dependency, but they also respect autonomy. They may recoil from someone too available, but they are drawn to someone whose world is intact without them, yet includes them. That paradox is the turning point. So every time you feel they're missing, you feel it, but you also do something. You pick up the thread of your life that might have paused. You act, you move, you invest, you grow, you commit. And when they return, you return too, but from a place of fullness, not deficit. That shift in you becomes their invitation. Everything changes when absence becomes your stage and presence becomes your posture. In this journey of an avoidant missing you, of walls dropping, of signals shifting, there lies a trap. You cling to the outcome. You envision them returning, fully open, changed, and you stake your worth on that outcome. But what if that outcome doesn't come? What if they pull back again? What if the shift falters? You'll be left fragile. Instead, you choose to let go of outcome while staying true to intention. You commit to the intention of connection, authenticity, mutual growth. You release the fixation on how, when, or if the outcome will happen. Letting go of outcome doesn't mean you give up. It means you free yourself. You shift from this must lead to I will show up as you align with your intention, to create a connection where both people feel seen, safe, respected. You release the expectation they will change or they will stay. Because in releasing there is freedom, and in freedom there is magnetism. An avoidant missing, you will sense less pressure, less expectation, less need, and that relief can open doors. Staying true to intention means you carry your values: respect, honesty, integrity, presence. You hold them regardless of how the avoidance shows up. You don't compromise, you engage in ways that reflect you. Your intention is your guidepost. Your outcome is not your jailer. You'll notice a shift in your internal dialogue. Instead of "if they don't text me back, I'll be hurt," you say "if they don't text me back, I'll be okay." Because I value myself and I value what I bring. Instead of "I must make them commit," you say "I will be consistent. I will be clear. I will stay true to my standards." That subtle shift from outcome focus to intention focus is seismic because it changes how you operate. It transforms your posture. It changes their perception of you. They sense you're not invested in their validation. You're invested in truth. Letting go of outcome also means you become present with uncertainty. When an avoidant starts missing you, the path forward isn't guaranteed. They may retreat, they may sprint, they may stay, they may leave. But you anchor in your intention. You say, regardless of what happens externally, I will honor myself and I will honor the potential of this connection. You turn uncertainty from dread into possibility. When you let go of outcome while staying true to intention, you activate a new power. You become resilient. You become magnetic. You become the person who doesn't need their missing to validate your worth, but whose world grows because of it. You communicate, "I'm here, I'm real, I'm ready," and that honesty resonates. The avoidant doesn't feel the pull of your need. They feel the pull of your authenticity. So release the outcome. Honor the intention. Stand firm. Show up and watch as the missing transforms into movement. When an avoidant starts missing you, it's tempting to fall back into old patterns, the same familiar routines, the same codependence, the same emotional scripts that left you both depleted. But connection renewed through their missing is not connection restored. It's connection rebuilt from a new foundation. When you rebuild the connection, you bring both of you forward. You don't resurrect the past. You redesign the future. First, you redefine the foundation. You ask, what will this connection be built on now? Will it be unspoken tension and distance, or will it be transparency and mutual respect? You choose the latter. You set the groundwork: open communication, consistent presence, boundaries, emotional safety. You decide what to include, what you no longer tolerate. From the past, silent disappearing, stonewalling, emotional withholding. And you decide what you embrace: engagement, reciprocity, authentic sharing. Second, you invite them into the new ground without dragging the old debris. You might say, "I appreciate that we've had distance. Now I'd like us to build something that honors both our needs." You create rituals of presence, a check-in that doesn't feel like a test, a conversation that doesn't feel like interrogation, a time together that doesn't feel like pressure. The avoidant senses the difference. They sense the fresh rules, the safe container. They sense they might stay rather than flee. Third, you model the new foundation. You live it. You show up for your commitments. You arrive on time. You meet your boundaries. You speak your truth. You allow vulnerability. You allow discomfort. You allow growth. When they pull back, you respond with curiosity, not collapse. When they pull in, you respond with welcome, not surrender. The connection becomes a dance, not a chase. Fourth, you monitor the architecture. Are you slipping into old patterns? Are they retreating again? Do you feel yourself shrinking in front of them? When yes, you return to your blueprint. You revisit your foundation. You recalibrate. Because rebuilding connection is not a one-time act. It is a continuous design process. The avoidant is on a shifting terrain. You want to be the stable ground. When you rebuild from a new foundation, something changes deeply. The avoidant begins to perceive you differently. They begin to see you not as the person they could leave, but the person they may choose to stay for. Their missing becomes less about desperation and more about decision. You become the presence they run toward, not the void they flee from. Rebuilding connection from a new foundation also honors your wounds. Instead of pretending they never happened, you integrate them. You admit when you got hurt. You tell them, I'm working to trust again. You invite them into your healing, not as burden, but as authenticity. And they see you. They respect you. And your connection becomes growth-oriented. So you rebuild. You construct a new temple of connection where both you and the avoidant can step inside, but only if both bring their best. And when they miss you now, they don't just miss who you were, they miss who you've become. And that, more than anything, changes everything. Finally, when an avoidant begins missing you, recognize this: their missing is not a guarantee. It is an invitation. It's an invitation to something greater: authenticity, vulnerability, transformation. It is not a trap. A trap would be returning to old chaos, old cycles, old confusion. An invitation asks you to rise, to step into your power, to respond with presence, value, clarity. Their missing demands nothing, but offers everything if you respond wisely. You might feel tempted to interpret their missing as proof you won, like you've conquered their wall. But winning isn't the conquest. It's the connection that follows. And that connection must be intact, respectful, aligned. So you ask, what is this missing inviting me to? What growth, what truth, what new dynamic? And you answer by showing up, not just present, but elevated. When you use their missing as an invitation, you give yourself permission to heal, permission to be whole, permission to engage with someone who can meet you halfway. You don't settle for less. You don't fear they'll pull away. You accept that maybe they will, but you also accept that if they don't, something profound could happen, something people write stories about, and you act accordingly. You open, you share, you hold your space. You leap not into the game of winning them back, but into the game of building together. Their missing resets the board, gives you a fresh hand, and you play it from power. When you view their missing as invitation, you shift from fear to curiosity, from need to possibility, from waiting to stepping. And that shift is visible. The avoidant senses they aren't waiting for me, they're inviting me. That is magnetic. That is real. And in that magnetic field, the walls come down, the longing deepens, the connection grows. So don't trap yourself in their missing. Don't react out of old fear. Respond from your new self. Accept the invitation. Build the connection. And watch how everything changes when an avoidant misses you. And you meet that moment with preparation, integrity, and power. In this journey, you've glimpsed something extraordinary. The moment when someone who built walls begins to feel what those walls blocked. You. That moment is not just about their missing. It's about your emergence. It's about how you stand when they turn back. It's how you remain present, steadfast, true. It's how you hold your value while they test theirs. It's how you communicate with clarity rather than chasing. It's how you set boundaries that honor your heart and their space. It's how you transform absence into presence in your own life. It's how you let go of outcome while staying true to intention. It's how you rebuild connection from a new foundation. And ultimately, it's how you receive their missing as an invitation, not a trap. Because here's the truth. When an avoidant starts missing you, the change begins. But the outcome depends on you. Do you step into your power? Do you own your story? Do you elevate your presence? Or do you slump into old patterns? The moment you choose your power is the moment everything changes. You become not just the one they miss, you become the one they recognize as the one worth missing. You become the person who stood firm when they were unsure. You become the person who continued to grow even while they retreated. You become the person whose world did not pause for their absence, but whose world expanded around it. And when that happens, their missing isn't just longing, it becomes alignment. So rise. Be ready for the shift. Let the missing be the turning point. Let their return or their choice not to return reflect your transformation, not your desperation. Let your life move forward at your pace. Let your heart be open, but let your feet stay grounded. Allow the avoidance missing to meet the fullness of your presence, and watch as everything changes. Because when someone who avoids draws near, it isn't just about them letting go, it's about you stepping in. Thank you for listening, for daring to see your value, for welcoming the shift. I believe deeply in your power. I believe in your story, and I believe that when you meet this moment with clarity, you will change not just a relationship, but yourself. Stay courageous, stay present. And until we meet again, goodbye, and take care of your story.